All right, welcome back, football faithful, to the Draft Podcast, a proud member of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. Your home for all things NFL Draft, where speculation is science and mock drafts are mandatory. I'm your host, Paul Adamzak, and tonight I've got a couple things for you. First, I'm breaking down one of the most misunderstood parts of the NFL draft process, compensatory picks. Now, I know what you're thinking. Paul, nobody cares about comp picks except the Ravens front office, but trust me, they matter. Understanding compensatory picks is like finding an onion ring in your French fries. These are extra draft capital that smart teams use to build rosters while the rest of the league is still figuring out if they can trade for Kirk Cousins. So we're going to break it all down, what they are, how they're awarded, and why some teams just seem to keep raking them in year after year. And stick around, because after that, we're diving into my top 10 cornerback rankings for this year's draft. I've scouted, I've ranked, and I've got a breakdown for each guy. Plus, I'll give you 3 strengths and 2 weaknesses and what teams they best fit for every player in my top 10. There's a lot to unpack, and I predict some of my rankings are going to turn heads and contort faces. So buckle up. We've got comp picks, cornerbacks, and probably some bad jokes along the way. This is the Draft Podcast, and we're kicking things off with a little lesson in draft economics. If I had a producer, I'd have some transition music here. Whatever. Okay, so let's break down the NFL draft's most confusing topics, compensatory draft picks. So these are those extra picks that some teams magically seem to collect every year. And if you've ever wondered how they actually work, well, so did I. And tonight I've got you covered. So let's start with the big question. What are they? Compensatory picks are extra draft selections awarded to teams that lose more qualifying free agents than they sign during the previous offseason. So we're looking at, for 2025, teams that lost in between 2023 and 2024. These picks are designed to help teams recover from roster losses, and they fall between rounds 3 and 7 of the NFL draft. The NFL Management Council, TM, uses a specific formula to determine which teams receive these picks, and while the full details of that formula were a mystery for years, we now have a clearer picture thanks to the 2020 collective bargaining agreement. So how are they calculated? The formula starts by evaluating players known as compensatory free agents, or CFAs. A CFA is an unrestricted free agent who signed with another team during the previous offseason's free agency period. And most importantly, their previous team must have wanted to keep that player. They basically had to offer them a qualifying contract offer. So players who were cut, for example, don't qualify. The NFL assigns each CFA a final numerical value, FNV, it doesn't matter, based on several factors. Number one, contract value, which is primarily the average salary per year, the APY, in the player's new contract. Number two, playing time. Players earn points for their percentage of offensive or defensive snaps with their new team, with a minimum requirement of 25% to qualify. So if you lose a top-end starter and then he ends up tearing an ACL in week 1, he actually doesn't qualify to the CFA format. So they got to play 25% of the snaps at whatever position they play on whatever side of the ball on their new team to qualify. And number 3, postseason honors. Basically, this is players who earn AP All-Pro or the Pro Football Writers Association on-field awards, Offensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, so on and so forth. Those players receive bonus points in the CFA formula. Once those numbers are calculated, the player is assigned a corresponding round value. For example, the top 5% of all qualifying players, they're given a third-round pick assignment. The top 10% of players, 4th round. The top 15% of players, 5th round. The top 25% of players, 6th round. And the top 35% of players, 7th round. So after that, they have essentially no compensatory pick value. Teams that lose more CFAs than they sign can receive compensatory picks equal to the net loss. For example, if a team loses 5 CFAs but signs 3, they're eligible for up to 2 compensatory picks, and each CFA signed cancels out the highest valued CFA lost. Does that make sense? In short, compensatory picks are about balancing free agency losses with gains, rewarding teams that lose key talent. Think of it this way. You lose a guy who is important to your team, and the league hands you a scratch-off ticket in return. If you're a savvy drafter, you can turn that lotto ticket into a big-time payday. If you're Chris Greer, you pick a guy who's going to be playing in the CFL in 3 years, and that's no disrespect to the CFL. So that's your quick crash course on compensatory picks. A little bit confusing at first, but once you understand the formula, you can see how smart teams use it to their advantage. Now that we've covered compensatory picks, let's switch gears and talk about something less complicated, like playing cornerback in the NFL. So this is, again, my transitory period. I don't have any music. I'll just take a drink of coffee. All right, the cornerback class. This year, absolutely loaded. I've spent a lot of hours, way too many hours, breaking down tape. I've got my top 10 CB rankings ready to roll. Some of these guys are future shutdown corners. Some of them are versatile chess pieces, are going to be able to move around the defense. And if you were just tough, gritty defenders who are going to help an NFL roster and make GMs look smart at the end of the day. So let's get into it. Starting at the top with the player who's been making noise since his freshman season at Jackson State. That's right. Number one corner in this draft, Travis Hunter out of Colorado. Now, I did an entire episode about Travis Hunter. What he is as a player, what he is as an athlete, where does he fit in the NFL? You can go back, I believe it's episode 3, the Travis Hunter conundrum. I remember that. And you can see exactly what I think about Travis Hunter as a wide receiver prospect versus a corner prospect. And as you can tell, I think he's going to be a better corner than he is a wide receiver. So here we go. Travis Hunter is my number one corner. The height, the weight, the 40 time, these are all projected. He did not run or do anything at the combine. So he was listed at 6 foot, 188 pounds. He's projected to run sub 4.40 in the 40, and his draft projection is top 5 in my mind. So here's the profile, the breakdown on Travis Hunter. He's at his best in press man, elite fundamentals, physicality, and his ball skills allow him to dominate one-on-one matchups. His instincts and football IQ make him equally effective in zone coverage, which add to his versatility. While there are areas to refine, such as tackling and technique, his ceiling as a quarterback is among the highest in this class, provided his lean build and durability are able to hold up at the next level. His fits anywhere. If you have a team with a defense, Travis Hunter will fit. But to name some spots, the Cowboys, Commanders, and Patriots make the most sense. Strengths and weaknesses of Travis Hunter. Well, let's start with the strengths. Elite ball skills, explosive athlete, able to transition quickly, and he shows natural instincts in coverage. So weaknesses, he does lack ideal bulk for press coverage in the NFL, and there are some durability concerns, especially with that shoulder. Tackling at the next level may be an issue. But despite all this, Travis Hunter is my number one corner. He's my number one athlete in this draft. And if you look at the draft podcast top 50, I've got him up at number 2 behind Abdul Carter. So you could call it my top offensive player on the board if you look at it one way or another. But Travis Hunter, my number one corner in 2025. Number 2, and this is where I may start to go off the rails with the versus the real draft analytic people, but I have Jahdae Barron as number 2. Texas defensive back, combine numbers, height, weight, 5'11", 194 pounds, did run 4.39 in the 40. And if you look back at another previous episode, he was one of my big winners. He came in over 190 pounds and he ran sub 4.40. He is a first round lock. I don't think he's the first defensive back off the board. He may be the third defensive back off the board, depending on how teams see him, but he's my number 2. He is at his best as a versatile defensive back, where his sharp instincts, anticipation skills, and quick reactions allow him to excel, especially in zone coverage. His ability to read the quarterback and break on routes makes him a disruptive playmaker, whether lined up as a boundary corner, as a nickel defender, or off coverage at safety. While Barron's smaller frame may present challenges in press man situations, his physicality and competitiveness pop on the tape, and I'm confident the guy can hold his own. With his positional flexibility and strong football IQ, Barron will be an impact defender in any scheme that values versatility. I have here give my Jalen Ramsey take. So Jahdae Barron, I will start. He is not Jalen Ramsey. He's not the same level of athlete as Jalen Ramsey. He's not quite as big as Jalen Ramsey. But the comp here, and I'm terrible at player comp, so just take that with a grain of salt too. I look at Jalen Ramsey as the ultimate chess piece. He can play outside. He can play nickel. He can play way back at safety. You can take him one-on-one. He can do a lot of things on the defensive side of the ball. He doesn't have to. He's not just drilled down as this is all he can do. You have to play him here, and you have to figure out what to put around him. That's not Ramsey. You can just pick a spot, put him in, and he'll be the best at that spot on that team. And I think Jahdae Barron is that kind of versatile, flexible player. I think early on, he's going to be a nickel defender, and he's going to be a great one. I think he has CB2, CB1 type hype, a type of ceiling, because he does have that long speed. We're talking about the Jim Thorpe player last year, best defensive back in the country. He's my number 2 corner. He ran that sub 4.40 at the combine, and I was like, yep, that's it. Best defensive back in the country, and he's got the speed for the NFL. I'm done. So I'll go through my strengths and weaknesses. Or wait, did I give you the teams? No, let me give you the teams where he best fits. Number 1, the Commanders. They could use another corner. Number 2, the Falcons, picking at 15. That might be the spot. And the Jets. I can see them going corner at 7. I think it depends on who else is available on the board at that time, but they just lost DJ Reed. So Jahdae Barron sliding in across from Sauce that'd be a nice 1-2. So Jahdae Barron, my number 2 corner, his strengths. Number 1, versatility. Number 2, great ball skills and instincts for the position. And number 3, excellent closing burst. They call it click and close. Once it clicks up here, he's able to drive on the ball and interrupt the ball as it gets to the receiver on time, on target. So weaknesses from Jahdae Barron, he might lack size to thrive outside. There may be a ceiling there. I think we're going to find out early on if he can play outside or not. I think you start him in the nickel role and you allow him to build from there, but I think he's got a really, really high floor. And then the second weakness is he's best suited in a nickel role. So when you hear that as an NFL, as a DC, you think, well, if he's a nickel role, that he's a third corner at best. But with the way spread offenses work now, we're seeing a lot of too high shell. You can probably play him in the back and then roll him toward the line of scrimmage if you want to mug him up on some guy in the slot. It's just a versatile chess piece, and I think Jahdae Barron is going to be a great, great NFL defensive back. So he's my number 2. Moving along down the line here, and this is going to be a quick pod tonight. Number 3 is Will Johnson from Michigan. Injury last season, so we don't have the official numbers. Hoping that he goes at his pro day here in a couple. It's the 19th, so less than a week. Height, weight, they list him at 6'2", 194. Long, good size. Projected 40 time at 4.48. That's my big hang up right now. We're going to see what he runs. But his draft projection is still, he's a round 1 guy. Maybe the second corner off the board, in all honesty, but I have him as my number 3 behind Barron. So here's my scouting take on Will Johnson. Thrives in zone, exceptional foot quickness, fluid change of directions, and natural instincts allow him to consistently disrupt passing lanes. His length, 6'2", long arms, but limited long speed can create concerns against vertical assignments. Frame provide a strong foundation for press man assignments. Johnson's ability to read plays and react decisively make him a valuable asset in off-coverage schemes. And with continued refinement in his technique, he has the potential to become a high-level starter in the NFL. Best fits, the Colts, the Bears, and the Steelers. Will he be on the board at 21 and be a real boon for Pittsburgh if he were still there? Strengths for Will Johnson. Excellent size, excellent length. People have called him the best pure defender in this draft. He's got great zone instincts, and he's got effective ball skills. He has a knack for making plays off of tip balls. Some weaknesses, and we've heard this, and it probably won't go away until he runs at Michigan's Pro Day. He lacks elite recovery speed. If he gets beat off the line, he's not a guy who appears on tape to be the chase down guy especially at the next level. And he's probably best suited for off coverage systems, which is going to limit his placement in the NFL. But there's still plenty of places where Will Johnson is going to fit and be an effective starter. I hope that 40 time comes in under 4.45. I think that's a boon for him. I think it's a boon for the NFL. But Will Johnson, because of the unknown, I have Barron over him, and I have Johnson at 3. So I should have said this too. Top 50 board came out last week. If you didn't see it, go back and take a look at that. I have 7 corners in my top 50. I'm going to give you 10 tonight. So 1, 2, 3, Travis Hunter, Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, and that moves me on to number 4. And if we go up to the top 50 board, he's my 28th overall player coming up. Mad Max, Maxwell Hairston, the diminutive corner from Kentucky. 5'11", 183 pounds, but the fastest guy at the NFL Combine. Ran 4.28 in the 40. He broad jumped 10 feet, 9 inches, explosive. I project him as a late 1, early 2 pick. So here's the profile. Mad Max. He's faster than bad news on social media. Blink, and he's 10 yards downfield. He's a guy who's best in off-man and especially zone coverage, where his aggressive play style, quick reactions, and impressive speed that shows up on tape allow him to challenge receivers at the catch point. His willingness to engage in bump and run techniques makes him a disruptive presence in tighter coverage situations, while his elite straight line speed gives him recovery ability when tested vertically. Although his smaller frame may limit his effectiveness against bigger physical receivers, Harrison's competitive edge, ball skills, and knack for making plays in coverage give him the tools to develop into a reliable starting cornerback at the next level. The top fits I have for Mad Max are the Falcons, Raiders, and Chargers. And like I said, I see this as, if you looked at the mock draft we did last week, he was a late first-round guy. Could see teams in that early 2 look at the cornerback board as we end round 1 in that 25 to 32 area. I can see teams moving around to move up and get Hairston. I can also see this guy is making it to day 2 because he's 5'11", $183. He is not the biggest corner in this draft. I just mentioned Will Johnson, 6'2", 195. So you're giving up close to 15 pounds, 4 or 5 inches. Like, the NFL is a big guy's game. And when you're only $183, like there's plenty of defensive backs under 185 pounds. And for Mad Max, the speed is what's going to get him drafted. But the tape is solid. He's sticky. He's annoying. He's very aggressive, and had 5 interceptions last year. I think 2 of them returned for 6. So he's absolutely a guy who can turn defense into offense. Talking about Mad Max, my number 4 corner, I'll give you my 3 strengths. Outstanding speed, impressive foot quickness, and very strong in bump and run coverage. Now, that said, there are a couple of weaknesses. Undersized, certainly, for some matchups, especially some slot guys. We tend to see some bigger slot receivers nowadays in the NFL. He's going to have to play off of those. I don't know if he has the strength to match up, which leads to my second weakness, needs to add strength for NFL physicality. So he's going to be an off-man, off-ball player, especially early on. If he can add 5 to 10 pounds over the course of his first 18 months in the NFL, he's going to be a really, really solid NFL player. Like I said, very aggressive, plays angry, and he's got speed to burn. You love that. I think I said last week, the NFL is about drafting freaks. You want as many freak of nature athletes on your team as you can. Mad Max is one of those guys. I think he goes early, and he's flying up boards, especially after that 4.28 he ran at the Combine. So Mad Max, 28th overall in my top 50, number 4 in my top 10 cornerbacks. And we'll move on to number 5. And this is where I'm going to start going way off board with maybe the guys that you start, the Mel Kipers, the Todd McShays, the Daniel Jeremiahs. All these guys are tremendous, and I listen to them all. I take all their scouting stuff like into account when I'm looking at these guys, just to kind of see what they're seeing, kind of match. What am I looking for? Oh, okay, I see that. So as we get outside the top 4, this is where I may start to skew a bit. But I believe in my rankings. These are guys that I want on my team, I would say. These are my top 10. If I'm drafting for my favorite team, I'm obviously better than Chris Greer, so these can go straight to Chris Greer's desk. Mad Max at number 4. Number 5, Azariah Thomas out of Florida State. 6'1", 197 pounds. Good size, good length. Didn't run the 40 at the combine. We'll see that at the pro day. He's projected to run around 4.47. And round projections, again, I'd say first to second. He's a guy I can see sneaking in at the end of the first round just because of the measurables. But the tape shows he's probably a second or third round guy. So measurables plus tape, late first, early second. Here's the profile. Azariah Thomas. Another Senior Bowl standout. That's why I have him so high. Azariah Thomas is at his best in zone coverage, where his combination of size and length, talk about length at arms, 32 and 3/8 inch arms, and smooth movement skills allow him to stay in position, in phase, and make plays on the ball. His ability to read routes and close quickly give him an edge in off-man situations, and his natural physical tools provide the flexibility to match up against bigger receivers. We didn't have that in some of the earlier receivers. Azariah Thomas, you don't have to worry about the size. While he can improve his technique in press man and tackling, his awareness and confidence stand out on tape. He was the best player on a bad defense last season. Nobody's arguing that Florida State was a shutdown defense. But with his impressive frame and some scheme versatility, Thomas has the traits to thrive as a reliable outside corner starter at the next level. A couple places where I think he fits best. The Bengals, you're going to see every defensive player mock to the Bengals. They just need defense. The Jaguars could use a large physical corner, and so could the Tennessee Titans. They won't take him number 1 overall. A potential player for their second round selection. I believe they picked 34. All right, let's catch up here a little bit. Fantastic. I've talked about Thomas, I think, probably since episode 4 or 5, when I started getting into, I want to say he was one of the Senior Bowl winners, and that's when I think I first noted Azariah Thomas. Looked really good in practice, and once again, stood out in the game. But I take a lot of credit to guys who are able to show up at the Shrine Bowl's good. I like the Senior Bowl a little bit more, personally. I think Jim Nagy does such a great job there bringing in NFL caliber players. So when you perform well at the Senior Bowl, I think it shows. And again, the Senior Bowl is like less than 2 weeks. So if you can show up and show out at the Senior Bowl, that pretty much says that you're going against NFL caliber talent. There's nobody hiding at the Senior Bowl. There's nobody you can, well, I'm going to go against that guy because he stinks. All of them are NFL caliber players. And also, you're getting NFL coaching, NFL defensive schematics, and there's such a small window in which you get to learn your position, learn the keys, and then kind of like figure out what your job is in game. The guy just picked it up, and he was easily the best corner in Mobile all week. And that's why I was like, listen, he's probably down the 8, 9, 10 area for most other scouts. I like him. I've been an amateur draft guy for over 20 years, and it seems like guys like Thomas get overlooked every year. He was on a bad defense, didn't have a great statistical season, had 2 pick sixes on, I think, 3 or 4 interceptions, 2 pick sixes. So another guy turns defense into offense. And again, just look at the body. 6'2", nearly 200 pounds, long arms. He's just going to be a guy who shows up at an NFL team and just looks like you go to central casting, and I need a guy who can play a corner for the NFL. And they just look at Azariah Thomas and go, yeah, that guy looks the part. He looks the part in pads. So a couple strengths and weaknesses. I told you where he'll fit. Strengths for Azariah Thomas: strong physical presence, reliable in press coverage because of the build. And he's a solid tackler and run support. Not a great tackler, but a solid tackler and run support. And a lot of that is due to the frame. You don't have to take him off the field in 3rd and short with a guy, they're going to run the ball. He's 200 pounds. He can handle that edge. You're not going to get around Azariah Thomas. Some weaknesses, though: he's not a perfect prospect. Limited versatility in zone concepts. Maybe doesn't see it and react to it as quickly. He's more of a hands-on sort of guy. And he can struggle with faster receivers. He's going to run sub 4.5. I don't know if he runs sub 4.4. So there is a max out there. You're probably not going to put him on the outside against Jamison Williams and say, chase him down the field. You got him one-on-one with no safety over the top. But I think he's going to be a productive NFL player. I think he will play earlier than where he'll get drafted. And again, I think he's a second-round guy. I think most people have him lower than I do. But see, that's why you turn into my show, is to get this intimate knowledge that Thomas is going to get underdrafted and overperform. So that's my first, pound the table for this guy. He's going to be good. Azariah Thomas, my number 5 corner in a loaded cornerback draft. So that's the top 5. I've got 5 more to go, but I'll recap. Travis Hunter, Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, Maxwell Hairston, and Azariah Thomas are my top 5 corners in the 2025 draft. And we're at a tight 26 minutes. We're doing great. By the way, thank you guys for sticking around. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know. I'll say this. I am responsive to people who listen, who watch, and tell me what they want to hear about. And I'll give my mother-in-law a shout out right here. The first segment of tonight's show, the comp pick breakdown, it's because she sent me a text with some Apple News story. She's like, hey, what are these comp picks? What do they mean? And while I kind of I knew where they were slotted, and I know you kind of know, all right, we're going to get a couple comp picks next year. I didn't know the formula. So I was like, that's a great question. If I don't know it, I'm sure there's a number of people who don't know it. So I really do enjoy finding out what the areas are that people are interested in this process. So if you're watching this podcast, you're obviously interested in the draft. If you have any questions whatsoever, there are no dumb questions. I find myself all the time while I'm writing these, who's my target audience? Am I talking to Todd McShay right now? Probably not. I'm probably talking to someone who's a little bit on the other end of the spectrum, just trying to figure out who fits their team, what names they want to get when they're watching the draft. So I got to bring this back down to earth, I feel like sometimes, and go from a perspective of someone who's coming in completely blank on this draft. So I appreciate you listening. Please comment with questions, anything you have. If you made it this far, I hope you listen to the next 5, because this is where the rubber hits the road, right here in the next 5. Anybody can tell you the top 5. It's hard to give you 6 to 10. So here we go. 6 through 10 and my top 10. These last 2 guys, if you saw my top 50 last week, are in that top 50. And this guy, let's see, Azariah Thomas, I had his 40th overall. He's my number 5 corner. If I look at the top 50, number 41 overall. So exactly 1 spot behind Azariah Thomas is my number 6 corner. And you may see this guy flopped in a lot of other rankings. I have Trey Amos out of Ole Miss as my number 6 corner. 6'1", 195 pounds, good size. 4.43 ran at the combine, solid time for corners. A draft projection of, I'm going to say, round 1 through 3. I can see him hitting round 1, especially if we get a run on corners early. Probably don't expect that, if I'm being completely honest. Round 2, absolutely. Round 3, he's not going to be available by pick 96. He's going to be gone. So Trey Amos, here's the profile. Might remember him. Now, he went to Ole Miss. You might remember he played for Alabama before last year. He flashed on tape for Alabama in 2023. Picked up where he left off after transferring to Ole Miss in 2024. Amos had 47 tackles, 3 interceptions, 13 passes defensed, broken up. This is a very instinctive and we're going to use this word a lot to describe him, gritty defender. Not the greatest athlete, gritty. Good size, good speed. Like I said, not the most explosive athlete, can get caught out of phase, especially against faster targets, but his technique, the football IQ, the willingness to mix it up more than make up for it. This is a tough dude. This is a guy, he did 13 reps on the bench press at the combine. So 13 reps at 225. He's under 200 pounds. 13 reps for a corner is outstanding. And once again, I said gritty. You're going to hear words like gritty and toughness, because that's what shows up when he's battling receivers. Toughness and his natural feel for route concepts. That's what makes him a disruptive presence. That's what's going to make him a good NFL player. He's at his best in off man. He can play in zone. He's got great instincts. He's got good size. Once again, the word physicality, it allow him to stay sticky in coverage and challenge the catch point. Solid frame, gritty play style. Amos has the tools to develop into a good NFL player. And there are a lot of teams that can use good, gritty cornerbacks. The top three I have are the Broncos, the Texans. Boy, wouldn't you love to see him play for D'Amico Ryans, and the Panthers, who could use a lot of secondary help. He's going to fit anywhere. He'll slide right in and probably challenge for playing time right out of the gate. Strengths and weaknesses of my 41st overall ranked player, my 6th overall corner, Trey Amos from Ole Miss. Strengths: good size for perimeter matchups. You'll love him out there. Excellent instincts in coverage. He can play zone. He has the ability to see things, play with his back, or play with his front side to the football, eyes on the quarterback, and he plays with such toughness, such grit, willing tackler. He doesn't have to come off the field for third and short, right? Some weaknesses: he does lack elite long speed. Good speed, not great speed. And he does occasionally struggle against quick guys, the smaller the route runners, the Khalil Shakir types, where kind of blink and they're gone. If he can't get his hands on you, he may struggle. But I think he's an NFL corner, not in the top 5, just outside my top 5. So that was number 6. We're moving along pretty well, pretty good clip here. Number 7, and my final corner in my top 50. He's down at 48, so just barely making it inside the top 50. I'm talking Savon Ravel Jr. out of East Carolina. If you've seen it, you've probably read it as Chavon, but the H is silent. It's Savon, silent H. Savon Ravel Jr., East Carolina. And this is the ultimate, projection at this point. This is a guy that didn't play this year. So we're going on 2023 tape. 6'2", 194 pounds. Big. Right? Projected to run around the 4.47 range, maybe not the fastest guy, enough, we'll say the requisite NFL speed. Draft projection, I have him at rounds 1 through 3, and this is where I think teams are going to be all over on this guy because, like I said, this is a real projection pick. East Carolina, so you're looking at competition, and then, like I said, the ACL injury last year, you're going off film that's almost 2 years old. How does the injury affect him? How does the quality of competition affect him? What is he like coming off an injury? But I'll say this. Here's the profile. Ravel turned heads with his play in 2023, logging 55 tackles, 12 passes broken up, and 1 interception before his 2024 season was cut short by an ACL. At 6'2", 194 pounds, Ravel's size and length immediately stand out on film, giving him the tools to match up against bigger NFL receivers on the boundary. That's big. Boundary corners. Moves well for his frame, showing solid speed and fluid transition. While he's not the most explosive athlete and can lose ground to faster targets downfield. What sets him apart, though, is the physicality. And it's going to come up again, especially with all these lower corners down here. Love physicality. You got to be able to tackle if you're not the fastest human being on the planet. Thrives in press coverage, using that length to disrupt timing at the line of scrimmage and stay in phase throughout the route. While the ball skills, I would say, are still developing, he's not a guy who turns defense into offense. Doesn't show a natural knack for getting to the football. His willingness to get involved as a tackler will keep him on the field. We're going to have to look at continued refinement in the technique. And, of course, the medicals are going to have to check out. But he has the upside to become a dominant perimeter corner in the NFL. And this is a guy who I think we might see in a couple of years and go, how did he fall to the blank? How is he not the top corner in this draft? I think 6-8 weeks ago, Ravel was probably a top 2, top 3 corner. And this happens every year. Guys move up and down based on workouts. Harrison was not above Savon Ravel a couple of weeks ago. Then he ran 4.28, and now it's like, oh, the tape was good and the speed is there. So, all of this is projection. I don't know how early he plays at the next level. I am very conservative when it comes to injuries. I think Adrian Peterson ruined it for everyone when he tore an ACL and then came back 1 year later and ran for 2,000 yards. That's not the standard. That's not normal human being. That's not even normal for NFL players. It's really not. ACLs, stuff like that. The Achilles. I hate the year after the Achilles injury. Guys just aren't the same. It's a 2-year injury. You've got a year where you can move around, you're okay, and then a full another year before it's like, okay, he's back to what maybe he was. So it may take some time for Ravel to get back to where he was in 23, and then he's got some growing to do before he's like starting NFL caliber. What I'm saying is the film was awesome at East Carolina, and he's got the body. Once again, you go to Central Cast and give me an NFL-sized boundary corner. Boom. Give me Savon Ravel. So a couple of strengths and a couple of weaknesses. Oh, did I give you players or teams already? I don't think I did. Teams where Savon Ravel would fit best. I'm looking at the Cardinals. Love physicality. The Saints, they could use every defensive player they can get. And the Packers. Man, can you imagine Ravel across from Jair Alexander? Ooh, I'd love that. Couple of press man corners up there in Green Bay. It's 25 degrees. You're a wide receiver. You're 185 pounds. You run 4.3 at the combine. And then you got Jair and Ravel, and you just can't get off the line of scrimmage. It'd be a tough day in Lambeau for a wide receiver seeing those two. All right. Ravel, strengths. Ideal size for an NFL boundary corner. Number 2, strong in contested catch situations. I can't talk. Let's do this. Let's pause for just a moment. Yeah, that's fantastic. Ravel, very strong. Body type. Strong in contested catch situations. And finally, excellent movement skills for a guy his size. Once again, you don't expect a guy who's 330 pounds to move like a guy who's 150 pounds. All of this is on a sliding scale. 200-pound corner at 6'2". Excellent mover. He's not Maxwell Hairston. Excellent mover for his size. He's got 20 pounds on Hairston. Weaknesses. Has to be at the top. Durability concerns. ACL. You did it once, more liable to do it again. We got to make sure the medicals check out so he can get back to where he was in 2023. And second, he's going to need to refine his zone technique. Not a guy who can just play with the back and keep eyes in front of him. He's more of he's like Azariah Thomas. He's a physical guy. He wants to get his hands on you and just kind of dominate you throughout the route, as opposed to kind of letting you get to your spot and him pick a spot where, okay, ball should be out now, make the break, and get to you at the catch point. He's not that kind of player. He wants to be on you throughout the route and basically have the quarterback say, nope, there's too much physicality there. I'm not going to try to put the ball there because that corner's going to have a chance to make a play on it. So there's my number 7 corner, Savon Ravel. Barely inside the top 50. Couldn't mark him outside the top 50. And that said, he was at 48. And I looked at my top 50 while I'm doing this last night, 2 nights ago, a little bit over the weekend. My number 8 corner, I can't believe I have him all the way down here at 8. And I can't believe I didn't include him in the top 50. He's not a super sleeper, because if you watch college football last year, he was one of the names that was listed as like a first-round prospect. So like, I'm not telling you a name that, oh, here's a guy. Here's a guy, I found him. He's a diamond in the rough. Major player at a major program who didn't make it to the end of the season. So my number 8 corner, not in the top 50, maybe 51. I'd have to go back and look at the other positions, but he's in play for 51. And look at Jackson Dart at 50. I'm like, maybe he's 50. Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. Love this guy, man. Again, can't believe I have him down at 8. 6 foot, 193 pounds, which again, we're going to have to we have projected 40 time, didn't run at the combine. Under 4.5, we have him at 4.47. Draft projection, rounds 2 through 4. I don't know if this guy goes in round 1, even though he's got round 1 potential. The injury scares people, and I think it's going to knock him down. But here's the profile. Ben Morrison. He showed flashes of high-end ability while on the field, combining solid size at 6 foot, 193 pounds with super smooth footwork and strong instincts. Quick reaction time, disciplined technique, make for a natural fit in zone coverage at the next level, where he can keep his eyes on the quarterback and break on the ball. Morrison's ability to click and close, that's that play recognition and get downfield, downhill in a hurry, that stands out. And the ball skills allow him to turn deflections into takeaways. While he's not the fastest corner in this class, his positioning and spatial awareness help him mask those limitations. He's more of a guy who's in the right place at the right time, as opposed to he can make up for mental mistakes with his outstanding physicality. Morrison's physicality at the catch point is probably his most impressive trait, though improving his play strength will help him hold up better against bigger NFL receivers. His hip injury in October that ended his season is going to raise some durability questions, and rightfully so. But when healthy, Morrison's polished coverage skills and ability to create turnovers show a first-round talent. And a couple of places I think Morrison will fit really well: the Bills, the Bengals, and the Rams. I would be really upset, if we're being honest, if he ended up with the Bills, because I think he ends up as the Bills' number one corner. He is. The Bengals, once again, I could probably mock every corner in my top 10 to the Bengals. It makes sense. They need defensive players. And the Rams are an interesting spot. They're a team that's kind of old, transitioning to a younger unit. I think Morrison, man, in the second or third round, I'd say in the third round for the Rams would be an absolute steal for that team. And again, could go in day one, and assuming the hip checks out, he could be an instant impact player out there in Los Angeles. So strengths and weaknesses: Benny Morrison, strong tackler, played at Notre Dame, very fundamentally sound, great awareness and zone coverage. Again, back down the field, eyes on everything in front of him, click and create downhill, make a play on the ball, and very, very good feet. Never crosses him over, never caught out of position. He's never at a disadvantage athletically, frame-wise, when a receiver makes a break. The feet are always wide. 45s, he can cut left or right on a dime. Weaknesses: obviously the injury, a hip especially. Are the fluid hips going to be the same post hip injury? Medicals are going to be big. And second, he may lack that top end burst. Like I said, he's not going to be the most physically freakish cornerback. He's just going to be a very, very solid, be in the right place at the right time, able to make a play on the football type corner. And that's why I don't think he's going to be a first round pick this year. Second, maybe because of the potential. Third, probably because of the injury mixed with that potential. So that's number 8, Benny Morrison out of Notre Dame. All the way down at number 9, and this is where we get to my guy, Darian Porter, Iowa State. This is pure projection. And these are, man, if you've watched the show, I think he's probably, I've mentioned him in just about every episode, but I'm going to go through it again for people who just want corners. Welcome into the first episode. Darian Porter, Iowa State. Have you heard of him? 6'3", 195 pounds, long, 40 time, 4.30, fast, broad jump at 10'11", explosive, 3-cone is 6'7", quick. This guy is an athlete. 3 syllables, capital A. Draft projection: I'm going to say rounds 2 through 5, okay? And this is wide range, probably my widest range in my top 10. Round 2, I have him as a possibility because of the athletic traits. Holy moly. Like, Noah Igbenogany was a first-round pick, and I don't think he was anywhere close to the athlete that Darian Porter is, okay? Round 5, I mentioned last week, another corner. He went to the Seahawks. Tarek Woolen went in the 5th round last year at 6'4", 200 pounds. Another guy who could just move, real long, real lanky, didn't have like real refined technique, but he went out to the Seahawks with that length, with that speed, and was an instant impact player, an all rookie season. And I look at Darian Porter as like the same kind of guy. So here's the profile. If you haven't heard me talk about him at length yet, this is a converted wide receiver. Okay. Iowa State, played wide receiver, special teams for his first 2-3 years there, is new to the defensive side of the ball, but he brings a rare blend of size. I mentioned 6'3", 195, and elite speed, 4.30 in that 40. And he was a tremendous high school track athlete, like 47-second, 400-yard dash, like unbelievable. Brings all that athleticism to the cornerback position where you want the freakiest athletes. The athletic traits jump off the tape. You talk about closing bursts, ability to recover when beaten are his absolute standout qualities. While still developing that cornerback technique, his length and speed allow him to stay sticky in coverage, especially in press and off-man alignments. Put one guy in front of him, say, Darian, that's your guy. Take him away, and I think he can do it. His route recognition is improving, and there are plenty of examples where his inexperience shows on the film, particularly when diagnosing those complex route combinations. But despite that, the ball skills are well above average. I mean, this guy was a wide receiver. So clearly, when he goes into college, where do we want this guy playing? Shows ability to catch the ball. You go, yeah, you can play wide receiver. And he's shown a knack for making plays when targeted. Like I said, on tape, it looks like Iowa State was like, look, we're going to put you on their most physically impressive wide receiver and just take him away. And when teams tried to get that player the ball, Porter very often, if he wasn't knocking it away or knocking it out of the hands, getting a hand on it right before it gets there, very, very good. Like I said, just showed a knack for making plays when his receiver was targeted. You talk about his impressive physical profile, upward trajectory. Porter is a high upside developmental prospect who could become a key contributor if put in a position to succeed. Places where I think he could potentially succeed: the Chiefs, love him there. The Texans, love him there. And the Dolphins, I would like him on my team. That's why I try not to mock too many things and be too much of a homer. I know what my background is. Try not to be a homer. But man, what I love Porter. He just reminds me of Sean Smith, another guy who was 6'4", about 205, just such a physical freak of nature, played for Miami for 5-6 years, and he was just a dominant force on the outside. Strengths: Darian Porter, number 9, elite athletic profile, tremendous speed and length, and knack for being a playmaker. What else do you want at the cornerback position? Obviously, the weaknesses, very raw in technique, and he's an inconsistent tackler. 2 years playing defense, there's going to be some holes. There are some holes in the tape, but the draft is about projection. Once again, I have 2-3 quarterbacks in my top 50, none of them inside the top 5. This is about projection. It's about position value. Cornerback is a high value position. Freak athletes are high value targets in the NFL draft. The tape doesn't show a top 10 corner, but when you mix it with the measurables and you look at elite NFL coaching, I think this is a guy that he's going to get overdrafted. And I think he's going to be able to come in and be a player. I really do. He's one of my guys. I told you at the beginning, I'm going to bang the table for some certain guys that may not be in anybody else's top 5, top 10, top 20. But I just see these guys as elite physical prospects. They're going to be able to make a name for themselves at the next level. And we're nearing the 50-minute mark, so I'll wrap this up. My number 10 corner, rounding out the top 10, I went through 3 or 4 different names before I settled on this guy. And I settled on him. I didn't settle on him. I made the decision because this is maybe the best technician outside of Jahdae Barron in this draft. So my number 10 corner out of Kansas State, Jacob Parrish, and this is another Senior Bowl guy. 5'10", 191 pounds, ran 4.35 at the combine. Got a good athletic grade at the combine, 6.30. He was something like 5th or 6th in his athletic profile based on his stats or based on the athletic profile. I projected this guy to be a 3rd to 4th round pick. But I think this is going to be a guy who is going to walk into the building and he's just going to fit. So here's the profile. Another Senior Bowl standout, a guy who doesn't stand out maybe physically, but it became apparent he could hang. Jacob Parrish is a technically refined cornerback whose sharp footwork and disciplined approach make him a natural fit in the NFL. He's just an NFL player. Excels in mirror press situations, uses active hands and smooth transitions to stay connected to receivers off the line. His click and close ability stands out on tape. His break on underneath routes is sudden and decisive, often arriving at the catch point with perfect timing. Go back and watch the Senior Bowl. did it on tape at Kansas State, showed out well, even an off man in goal line at the Senior Bowl. This dude was 6 yards into the end zone on like a 3rd and goal from the 1 yard line. And they throw a 2 yard in breaking stick route. He's 8 yards off the ball at the snap of the ball. And he's able to come down and make a play on the ball as it arrives at the player's chest. Unbelievable. Knocks the ball out, throws his body into the backside of the receiver. Knocks that ball out. Incomplete pass, 4th and goal. Player, squatty frame, 5'10", shorter arms, under 31 inches. They measured him at 30 7/8. May create some concerns against bigger bodied receivers, but his savvy route recognition and ball skills help minimize those matchups. Another plus, Parrish's special teams value provides a strong floor early in his career. So if you're looking at guys just looking to make the 53, is in your top 3 corners on your roster? Maybe not, but he can be your 4th corner. He can play the slot, and he gives you special teams upside. While the coverage skills suggest maybe a dime roll. If he can improve his discipline against double moves and continue developing as a run defender, Parrish has the tools to carve out a meaningful role at the next level. Again, this is another Senior Bowl standout, a guy who doesn't stand out physically, but it became apparent he could hang. And a couple of places I think that he would make sense: the Patriots, the Ravens, and the Steelers. Steelers can use a bunch of defensive backs. This is going to be your draft Parrish, and the defensive back room is filled out. I don't believe that at all, but I believe he provides a great defensive piece for Pittsburgh. And again, special teams, gunner, physical guy, just feels like a Mike Tomlin guy. Strengths and weaknesses before we get out of here. Elite click and close, maybe the best on this list. Very technically refined, again, behind maybe Jahdae Barron, 2nd best on this list. Very, very good technically. Outstanding route recognition. Just a guy who knows the position. And like I said, he's just a guy who can walk in, tell me where I'm playing, coach. And because of the click and close, because of his technical skills, good hands, good feet, he's just going to be able to play wherever he's at. Couple of weaknesses: is susceptible to the double move, because he's so ready to click and close, because he so much wants to get to that ball on time. The subtle and then the receiver comes out here. He's already breaking inside. That showed up on film a couple of times, and he was inconsistent in run support. Despite the not terrible size, not outstanding either, wasn't a great tackler. So he's going to have to work on that. So there's my top 10. That's a wrap on this week's episode of the Draft Podcast. We broke down the mystery of compensatory picks, tackled my top 10 cornerback rankings, and hopefully gave you a better idea of which defensive backs I'm keeping an eye on starting 36 days from now. Wow. So next week's show is going to be just as packed. We're rolling out a brand new segment, Boom or Bust. I don't think I'm going to call it Boom or Bust. That's kind of cliche. We'll come up with a better name. We're going to break down some of the biggest gamble prospects in this year's class, guys who could become all pros or have you muttering, what the hell were they thinking by year 3? Also have some top sleepers, guys flying under the radar right now, but who we think could make some serious noise in the NFL. And if all that wasn't enough, I'm bringing in another guest to join the conversation. Plus, I'm thinking it's time to shift gears and break down a position on the offensive side of the ball, so stay tuned for that as well. As always, I want to hear from you. Did I nail my CB rankings? Did I completely whiff? Hit me up on Twitter at RufusP88 and let me know who you'd be pounding the table for in the war room. Make sure you're subscribed to the Draft Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your football fix. And if you like what we're doing, drop a 5-star review. It's like sending me a compensatory pick for free. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Paul Adamczak. I'll see you Monday morning on Flagship City Sports Talk, 9 a.m. on 105.9 FM and TalkErie.com. That's it. I'm out. Peace.